Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to let your audio and videos connect real quickly, and I'm going to mute everybody, but you're more than welcome to ask questions in the chat, and you can also, at certain points, we will open it up for you to unmute yourselves and ask questions, but just for the sake of everybody's experience and knowing that we all have background noise at various times that we can't control, I want to mute everybody to start us off. I am James Cole, and I work at NAF. Apologize if I'm looking away, I'm still admitting people. But I am the Director of Corporate Engagement Relations, and I have the great privilege of working with KPMG on a lot of their initiatives with NAF. And they're just a phenomenal partner. Today, we're working, and yesterday, we are working with them to provide some real appropriate cyber safety tips and resources, as well as to really talk about careers in cybersecurity. It's just an exploding industry right now, and a really exciting place to be professionally. So without further ado, I am going to kick it off to our amazing presenters, John and Mittushi from KPMG Cybersecurity.
Thank you, James. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for having us. Mittushi, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, James. Hi, everyone. Very good afternoon. Really excited to be here talking to you today, and I look forward to a very engaging discussion. In terms of a quick 30-second intro, my name is Mittushi. I'm a director with the cyber practice in KPMG, based out of our New York office. I've been with KPMG for a little over than 14 years now, pretty much working in and around information security and cyberspace across multiple geographies, including India and US. And I'm really excited to be talking to you all about this topic today, and also about cyber awareness, and looking forward to a great discussion. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Mittushi. Hi, everybody. I'm John Hodson, and thank you again for having us. This is day 2, so we had a really great time with the students yesterday, so I would just encourage everyone to use that chat feature, ask questions, and we'll try to get to them as quick as possible. I think the more engagement we have, the better the discussion we'll have overall. So again, John Hodson, I've been with KPMG since 2016. Prior to that, I spent a little over 20 plus years in a financial services business on Wall Street, working with institutional asset management firms and building out marketing strategies. So I'm the marketing lead for the cybersecurity practice. So with that, why don't we just get right into the presentation? So we're going to discuss a number of things here. Mittushi and I will split up the presentation. We're going to talk about really foundational things around staying cyber safe, some best practices, and then we're going to really delve into sort of what's going on in cyber, like what are the current trends, some events, some things that are happening within the landscape. And then Mittushi is going to talk a little bit about a day in the life and some career aspirations and career tracks in cybersecurity, because as James mentioned in the opening, it's really an exploding field, and there are a whole host of opportunities out there for you. And then hopefully at the end, we'll have time for Q&A. But like I said, you can submit questions through the chat feature at any point in time, and we'll stop and try to answer those as we go. So quick housekeeping items. I think we took care of that. Things will be on mute. And here we go. So let's go right to the next slide, James, if you will. We're going to talk about, protecting yourself online and a little bit about phishing. So those are the first 2 topics we'll discuss. So if we can go over to the next slide. Okay, and like I said yesterday, if there is sort of one thing that you can think about in terms of just a perspective, because I realize that you all are in high school and some of these things may be sort of second nature to you, but I would remind you that some of the things that we'll go over can easily be forgotten, and given the amount of times you set up passwords and login and IDs, it's very sort of easy to just sort of, go back and put something up that's very simple. And I would just, argue that to remember this little saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, meaning take a few extra minutes to set up the right password, the right login ID, the right credentials, right, the right safety measures. If you do that, you're going to go a long way to protecting yourself online and avoiding a lot of headaches as you go. So with that, right, let's take a look at this, and hopefully you'll reflect on this slide. And it's about really choosing strong email ID and password. So just take a quick look at, the name, date of birth, age, and address of this person here, and we're going to call him Cyber Buddy. And CyberBuddy has a birth date of 1/1/2009, age 10, and they live in Cyberworld. And if you take a quick look at the username and password, CB Cyberworld, CB 1/01/2009, you can see really simply that CyberBuddy took some basic information of him or herself and put it into the username and password. And these are things, again, that's very easy to do. We all get caught into the trap, but we absolutely want to avoid doing something like that, because for hackers, sophisticated hackers, or just basic people, that's pretty easy to figure out, right? You'd be surprised people will put password 1234 in their password. We want to avoid those things. So let's go to the next slide. We'll talk about some things. We want to avoid at all costs using your full name, age, address, date of birth, and gender for that login. And we want to put something a little bit more sophisticated in there in your username and password. And the next slide, we'll go into some detail about sort of what to do and how to build what we call a strong password, right? And it's combinations of things, phrases, numbers, symbols, combinations of upper and lower cases, right? Look at the password that's in the in that box right there that's highlighted, right? If you look at it, it says, the way we infer it's Mary had a little lamb, right? So that's basically from an old storybook, story fable. So something like that you could use. Do something that's personal to you, because for CyberBuddy, Mary Had a Little Lamb was a book and a fable that they resonated and they connected with. So it's very easy to remember from that perspective. So if you have a favorite book, a favorite sports team, or a favorite something, right, you can take that and with a little bit of a play around it using phrases, numbers, and symbols, you can build a much stronger password. So again, you don't want to, other things, you don't want to repeat your password. You don't want to share it with anybody. You don't want it to make it easy to guess passwords, and you never want to write it down on a notebook or anything where people can access it. So we want to store it in a safe place on your phone or somewhere safe.
John, I had a question.
Absolutely.
That I remember from yesterday's presentation about school sites or other things that require your username to be your name. And do you have any kind of thoughts around that?
Sure. I mean, certain times when you're building a username in schools, they're going to give you that username and ID. Right, so that's pretty much a standard setup. But again, the password is really where you want to hone in, the customization, right? Because that's really where you're going to ultimately gain access. So I think if they give you your first initial last name, you want to really take the time to build a more sophisticated password. And again, you don't want to share it, but you want to be able to remember it. So that's why we try to give advice around a favorite book, a favorite athlete, a favorite, inspirational leader, a favorite teacher, whatever, something that's really that you can connect to and easy to remember and use, again, play on words with phrases, numbers, and symbols. So we're going to kick it over to phishing. This is a very, very predominant thing in the marketplace right now. It's really where cyber criminals are really hoping to take the bait and give them sensitive personal information. And what they really do, and this is a big play on your emotions, right? You want to be able to do whatever you can to avoid them obtaining your sensitive personal information, things like a social security number, a driver's license information, your credit card, anything that could connect you, right? So criminals, when they get that information, they often pose as a trustworthy organization or an institution to kind of gain your trust. So with that, we're going to go to the next slide and we'll talk a little bit more about phishing and things to look for, right? Oftentimes they come in the form of a communication, an email, let's say, right? And sometimes a text. So we don't want to take the bait here, right? We want to look for things and look at the left-hand side. So 3 to 5 things here. Fake URLs, for example, facebook.net, right? We all know that's not correct. Urgent action required. Like I said before, your account is locked, or click here to unlock. It's something that it's a call to action that they want to tug at your heartstrings and get you overly emotional. So you're just going to start clicking around the email, the text, and not look for the other things. Things like official sounding names or logos. Check for spelling here, right? For example, we have KPMG here, where our company's name is KPMG. So in that case, you would see a typo right there. So the spelling of the company name is spelled wrong. And that's often the case. Typos are pretty prevalent in phishing attacks. So we want to look out for those. And also lucrative offers and prizes. Things, if it's too good to be true, it generally is, right? And also content sharing links. We want to look out for that. And I would just give you one quick example. I had this happen to me, actually, a real life example. Was towards the end of a year, and I was I got an email at work, and it was around when we started getting our tax forms, from our company at the end of the year. You have to pay taxes to the government. So our company was doing a phishing exercise to see if people would take the bait, and yours truly took the bait because it was around sort of our tax forms, and it says, hey, you got to click here because something happened with your W-2 and you need to rectify the matter. So I immediately got nervous, again, playing with your emotions, and I took the bait and I clicked on it, and I got a prompt that's saying, congratulations, you now have to take a 45-minute remedial class to get educated on it. So thankfully that I didn't harm the organization, but it really was a wake-up call for me to make sure that, you don't just react. And the best advice I can give you, if you see something like that, take a step back, a moment or two, take a deep breath, walk away, and then revisit it. And if you have any questions, the one thing that you'll hear throughout here, you should always go to a trusted adult, right? It could be a teacher, parent, guardian, older sibling. If you're not sure about anything regarding cybersecurity or online safety, go to a trusted adult and have him or her look at it with you. Great way to bounce ideas and things of that nature. So that's
so John, I didn't win the lottery.
No, I didn't. No, you're not. You did not win the lottery. So if you think you're going to win the lottery, chances are you're not, right? So being social yet safe. If we go to the next slide, this is something that I think we're all familiar with, which is social media handles, right? Instagram, TikTok, things of that nature. So we're going to give you just some really quick tips. Again, simple things, but again, it's very easy to forget, right? Really just focus on accepting friends or followers from people that you know, and check the list of friends and followers and make sure that you know all of them, right? And remember, don't add strangers as friends just to increase followers. I know that's a big thing for younger folks. They always are. You can be very competitive. I have 1,000 followers. Well, I have 5,000 followers. I think the best thing to think about here is always about quality over quantity, right? And remember, online friends are not always your friends. They can easily be someone else. And again, some people like to follow celebrities to see what they're doing, what their lifestyle is about. Great. If you want to do that, just make sure it's from a verified account and you don't allow them to follow you back at any and all costs, because chances are it's not who you think they are. So a couple of quick tips around just being safe online there. So if we can go over to the next slide, let's talk about posting updates and data online. A couple of things we want to avoid. Posting where you live, where you go to school, and places you visit, right? We don't want to give strangers that information, right? Because obviously they could follow you, they can find out where you are, and that could lead to some, bad things that we don't want to get into here. But just try to avoid putting that super personal and specific information. Try to be vague out there. So with that, if we can go over to the next slide, and again, some other things about feelings. The idea is post generic feelings. Examples are, hey, super happy I passed the test, right? But you want to avoid things like specific activities where someone could locate you. Meeting my friends outside of the movie theater, or I'm feeling lonely, I'm home alone, right? We want to avoid those things. Again, they sound pretty simple, but in the heat of the moment, sometimes you could forget, and then you could be in an emotional state and you just feel like posting it. So again, the best advice, again, I'm going to say this again, if you feel like you're going to get caught up into one of those trappings, take a step back, put your device down, and talk to a trusted adult, and they can guide you through the right decisions. And I think that little ounce of prevention can go a long way, to be safe online. So if we can go to the next slide. All right, so we're going to talk about pictures here. You can post pictures and videos, but again, we want to avoid the details about the pictures that you use, because you don't want to be able to track you back. Same thing, pictures that show personal information about your families and friends, and also pictures that could embarrass someone. We want to certainly avoid that, and we'll get into a little bit about cyberbullying a little bit later, because that's a very important topic. So with that, we can continue moving along. We can go over to our next topic, which is mobile apps. We can get right into it. This section is about identifying fake versus real, right? And there are 6 key tips that I want to just go over. Again, real simple, but again, we want to make sure we're all on the same page here. We want to confirm the name of the app, fake apps versus our blatant copies of the original app. We want to take a close look at the search results. How many people are looking at it? How many people, is it low versus high? We want to check the app developer. Is it someone that we know, or recognized in the past? Check the number of downloads, read the app description, look at the screenshots, and also read the reviews. And the next couple slides will go right into some actual examples. We're going to look at, I believe, WhatsApp. So we can skip this slide and go right to the compare and contrast. So if you look at the app examples, sort of what we're talking about back to those 6 tips, look at the circles. WhatsApp versus unfollow soft team. I don't know what unfollow soft team is, but I do know what WhatsApp Inc. is. Look at the reviews for WhatsApp, 115 million versus 293 for unfollow soft teams. So if that were me, I'd be more inclined to download the app on the left. And also look at the ratings, and the reviews. So the WhatsApp is a much higher rating and there are a lot more reviews. So just a quick compare and contrast about, they look the same. They both have green, communication signals, but they are very, very different characteristics when you delve deeper into it. So again, a good pictorial example of how to identify, compare and contrast apps that seem more trustworthy. So with that, we're going to kick over and just sort of, again, remind you about, points to remember about apps. Download applications from authentic Play stores only, right? Don't download fake apps. Provide necessary permissions only, and don't share sensitive personal information on these apps. So with that, we can go over to a very important section. We can go right into the next slide, James. And it's about cyberbullying, right? Really, really important topic. There's lots of laws on the books in the various states within the U.S. Something to think about because you can get into a lot of trouble when if you get caught up in cyberbullying. And oftentimes, the thing that I like to talk about is, there may be someone in the act of actually doing the bullying, but if you forward a note or sort of, thumbs up or put some sort of emoji next to it, you could sort of, perpetuate that bullying, and you can actually get in trouble as well. So you need to think long and hard about if you see something that's wrong out there, take a step back and decide how you're going to react to it. And again, a real definition, cyberbullying is when someone threatens you, insults you, or spreads gossip about you on social media like Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, or Facebook. So here are 3 quick tips, right? Don't respond. If someone's bullying you, remember that your reaction is usually what they want. So avoid that, right? Don't stoop to their level. And if you see people doing this online, block them, right? Block people who send you hurtful messages, right? And don't share, like I said before, inappropriate information about someone that could be hurtful. Because even though you're sharing it, you may not be creating the message. By you sharing it, you could be complicit in a cyberbullying instance or a crime. And I can tell you that colleges do look at this, right? They look at what you're doing online. So be very careful about what you post there. It's a character revealer. So just be very, very cognizant of what you post online and how that could impact your college career, because people do look at that. I can't stress that enough. So again, don't respond, block, and don't share. So we can go over to the next slide, James, and we're going to talk about one more section here around using smartphones. Again, very, very basic things. We got some questions on this yesterday, so I thought I would address it here. It's about location. What we generally say is we'd like to keep that location services turned off for the most of the time. So we got a questionnaire saying, hey, my parents use Life 360, right? Because they want to see where I am at all times. And I would say at that point, you can put it on and obviously leave it on if that's something, it's going to make your parents feel good and, you're okay with it. I think what we want to do is when you're back home, just shut it off, because what we want to avoid is going back to that social media and all those apps. We want that off, so you don't post your location when you're somewhere. If you're going out to a restaurant with a friend and you just click on it, and next thing you know, if the location's on Instagram or Facebook, that's where the location services feature can be a little bit dangerous and a little bit harmful. So just use it wisely. And again, if you have any questions about it, again, ask a trusted adult. One other thing about using smartphones is downloading information and copyright privacy. So you got to be careful what you download on your computer or your phone, because 1, they can be harmful viruses, and 2, downloading pictures and songs, that could be, information that you don't want to download. So this, be careful about what you download because it could be harmful to your computer or your device. So we can go over to, I believe, the next slide. And most of the time, we want to be careful about this notion of piracy, as I mentioned before. Downloading information with logos and copyrighted content can be dangerous, particularly if you're using it in a for-profit setting. So we want to be very, very careful. Piracy is illegal, so just be sure that if you're downloading something with copyright issues, you can always go back to that company's website, and they usually have licensing agreements on their site to tell you how to use their information. That's a really good check. And I think, again, if you have a question on that, go back to a trusted adult. But that's generally what I do. If I'm using someone else's information, I will go to their website and I will check the licensing agreements that are generally available, usually at the bottom rail of a website. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to remote learning and online content. But before that, James, do we have any questions in the chat feature that we could address?
We saw one that Mittushi addressed about an app claiming to prevent your phone from going to scamming sites. And Mittushi, did you want to address that for everyone to see or to hear?
Sorry, yes, sorry, my connection was a little patchy and that's why I got disconnected, but I'm back. Can you hear me now, James?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry, I will stop my video because I don't want to consume bandwidth in the video and be able to talk continuously here. Thank you so much, John, for taking us through all those sections. If you can go on to the next slide. I think, by now, all of us have really gotten used to learning remote, and I don't think 7 months back, any of us would have imagined that we could actually do an entire course or a curriculum virtually, not even going into the class even once, and taking all of this successfully in a remote fashion. So we just wanted to highlight a couple of to-dos and things which you should not do and you should do as you're taking up the remote learning and virtual classes. And this we believe is a trend, or this is a change which probably is going to stay for a long time, or probably forever with us as well. And I'm hoping it's for good, but yes, that's how it is. So, few tips here in terms of just make sure that there are ample number of avenues and mediums available through which enable virtual learning or remote learning. Just make sure that all the if you are upgrading any technology on your home equipments like laptop or desktops or your iPads or other gadgets, you test your technology to make sure that the relevant apps and it's compatible with the versions which is there. Also make sure that with obviously as many technology or as many apps you install, with that the risk also increases. So be cautious of what you choose to select and what you choose as the medium and what version you download. It's very easy actually to get trapped into fake and real apps. Going back to the section which John was talking a little while ago, while you're installing different features and enabling yourselves for remote learning. One other thing, more on the softer side or human side, is that we need to be more respectful to your peers and make sure that it's important to be be flexible. Important to be flexible. Not everybody may have same kind of environment and ecosystem, and hence just being respectful towards each other and towards the ecosystem which others have will only help you collaborate in a better fashion, and you'll be able to learn together in a better way. If you can go on to the next slide, James.
As I do that, that's a really good point. I think during this, as we're working from home, remotely, there's a lot more flexibility and understanding when a dog comes in or the doorbell rings. So I just appreciate that point.
No, absolutely, and it's important that we. Sorry. Yeah, it's okay. You can go on to the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine. Yeah. So just make sure, like I said, make sure that the sites you are referring to are authenticated. Like I said, there have been ample number of incidences and events in the past, in the last few months, in fact, after this pandemic hit us, that, there have been a lot of fake apps and a lot of unauthenticated sites which have opened up because everybody has realized that the kids and youth have much more exposure online than ever before, and hence it's very obvious for the bad guys or the dark web out there to throw those baits and get somebody or the other victimized. It could be for financial benefits or monetary benefits, or it could be just more of giving that emotional setback or just trying to bully you through these mediums. Whatever it is, the outcomes are not that great or consequences are not that great. So just a word of caution, and be careful as you continue to access and keep learning virtually and remotely. If you go on to the next section, Okay, so I think that was all about, what we wanted to talk to you from cyber awareness perspective, October being the International Cyber Awareness Month, on some tips and tricks of how to be safe or be cyber safe or be safe when you're online. Now onwards, what we are going to be talking about is two primary things. One, about some of the good practices within cybersecurity, or a little bit of, I would say I'm not even scratching the surface for cybersecurity, but getting you familiarized with some of the key terms and some key concepts within cyber, which if you are interested in pursuing your career in cybersecurity or in any related field, would probably add a little bit of value, and you can understand and you can get a feel of what this subject matter looks like. And then obviously we'll spend the later part, a few minutes on specifically talking about what are the career options which are there in cybersecurity, what are the various career paths or learning paths which you can take up should you wish to pursue a career in this particular field. If you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So, I think overall, what is the objective of cybersecurity? Any organization which implements any kind of cybersecurity measures, or there are so many, millions of professionals around the world, what are they trying to do? Ultimately, they're trying to secure or protect something. And what is that something? That something is an asset. Now, an asset can be anything which is deemed valuable by the organization, which helps them achieve their goals. Those assets could be physical assets, those assets could be information assets, those assets could be applications, those assets could be technology, those assets could be people, or those assets could be multiple processes and functions or business units, right? So there are different levels and different categories of assets which are there. Ultimately, what is important before we get into understanding how to secure it, you need to understand what you need to secure, right? So you need to get to the nth level of identifying those valuable assets which you would like to secure. For example, for me, my laptop is an asset. My hard drive where I store a lot of my personal data is an asset. A lot of my books and my notebooks where I write a lot of important information is an asset for me, right? So these are some of the examples of personal assets I have. And then I would put in place security measures just to make sure that those assets are secured. Now, just opening up, to the audience, if you would like to type some examples of what assets are valuable to you, or for example, to your college or to your school, what do you think some of those valuable assets are, which is important for you to achieve your goals, or for your academic institute, to achieve your goals? If you can list a few of them in the chat window, that will be great. Now, another important question, and as we talk more about it, is to say, okay, once you have identified the assets, we know our objective is to protect the assets. So what are the examples of some of the security controls which you could implement to protect those assets? So if I have a notebook with me, right, what is a control, or what is a security measure I can take to protect that notebook? Anybody who would like to unmute and answer, or maybe in chat if you would like to answer, how can I protect or secure my notebook? Okay, while people are taking time, a simple thing could be, first thing could be just a physical security. So if the notebook is very valuable and precious to me, when I'm not around that notebook, when I'm not using it, I probably secure it in a safe drawer, and under a lock and key, and I keep the keys in safe place, so that there is no unauthorized access to that notebook. And I'll come to it in a bit of what do we mean by unauthorized access, or in what ways can the notebook be harmed or unprotected, right? Or the other way could be that I want to make sure that I don't spill water accidentally on it, right? Such that the notebook becomes unusable for me, or becomes goes out of use for me, or the data or the things which I've scribbled on it with a pen, they get demarcated because I spill water on it, right? So I will probably put it in a secure place where there are no inflammables around, or there is no water, jugs or anything around, such that my notebook is available to me at all times. My notebook is accessible only to the people I want to, besides myself, and nobody is able to tamper any data into that notebook. So that brings me to another concept in cybersecurity. If you can go on to the next slide, James, which is we called as the information security triad. So remember I said, I want my notebook to be available to me at all times, right? So that's what, when I need it, it should be with me. So that's availability. Confidentiality, it should be seen only by the people I want them to see, right? So that's confidentiality. So it's restricted. So who should see it? If that's defined, and if it's constrained within that, then you mean that data or that asset, you protect its confidentiality. Integrity, if I wrote a certain thing in my notebook, I wrote a rhyme, I wrote a poem, nobody should be able to tamper that data or should be able to modify that data, right? At any point of time, it should remain the way it was, right? So that's what we mean by integrity. Now, this was a simple example which I was trying to tell you from my notebook perspective. Let's link it back to the larger world in terms of organization. So confidentiality essentially means that there is a certain set of information which should be accessible or which should be seen only by the people who are authorized to see it, right? So who should see it? That defines confidentiality. It should be, and they could see it when they want it, right? Or when they need it. That is availability. And integrity is they should see it exactly the way it was meant to be, and not in a tempered or an edited fashion, right? That's integrity. So these three, I would say, are the most important or the foundational guiding principles for information security or cybersecurity. Everything we do around cybersecurity relates to one or more of these aspects of triads. And I'm continuously looking at the chat team. So if you do have any questions, if you want to, discuss or want us to deep dive into any specific thing, feel free to throw it up there. I know John has his eyes also on the chat, so we should be able to cover it up as we are moving through the topics. Let's go on to the next slide, James. So, okay, so these are, the next concept or the next interesting, point which we would like to talk about in cybersecurity. It's threats and vulnerabilities. So essentially what is a vulnerability? Vulnerability is any weakness in the system, right? So it could be an inherent vulnerability, or it could be a vulnerability which is introduced because of the ecosystem or because of the environment. And what is a threat? So any external vector or actor which can exploit that vulnerability is a threat. Okay, so for example, if for people living in the coastal areas, right, what is a common vulnerability in coastal areas? That they are prone to floods and storms, right? That's an inherent vulnerability of that area. That if you are living near to a coastal line, at any point of time, you need to be prepared to be able to face heavy floods or heavy rains and storms, right? So you build your backup, and your plan B always is ready, especially in those seasonal times when the threat, and what is the threat? A storm is a threat, right? Or over flooding is a threat. Anytime that flooding exploits it being in the vulnerable area, then you are exposed to a certain risk. Now, the examples which I'm taking are from very close to the real life. They are not related directly to cybersecurity, but the idea is to just get these concepts a little bit clearer, because if you see, we can relate to all of these very easily in a day-to-day life. Now, if you see, essentially all of these threats which are listed here, they would usually tamper or exploit one or the other triage which we just spoke about: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So for example, DDoS is type of a threat, right, or an attack, which is denial of service attack, distributed denial of service attack. And what does it play around with? It plays around with availability. because when a DDoS attack is done on a website, the sole objective of that cyber attack is to bring that website down, shut it down, so that the genuine users are not able to access it, right? So what does it affect? It affects availability. When we say data leakage, so data leakage basically means that the data got accessed by people who were not supposed to see it, right? It got leaked. It was supposed to be confidential data, but it got leaked, so it affects confidentiality. Similarly, all the others as well, they typically affect or impact one or more of the triads which we spoke about in information security. Maybe I can take a quick 5-second pause to see if anybody would like to throw up any specific question or anything, you would like to discuss, or any example or anything, your experience you would like to share about if you have come across any of these threats and vulnerabilities in your real life. I know phishing is, for example, one of the most common ones which all of us would have faced. If you have an email ID, there is no way that you would have not got a phishing email. You may not have fallen prey to it like John did, but yes, you would have been attacked by it for sure. Okay, that's interesting to know. And this is one change which we have seen, because when I graduated, like almost 17 years ago, there wasn't so much focus on cybersecurity, and we didn't. I did have a couple of courses on information security, but it wasn't that common, honestly, at that point of time. And what we are seeing right now is that a lot of academic institutes, not just in US but across the globe, they're actually introducing specialized courses in this field, to the extent of doing even specialized postgraduate degree or graduate degree, specifically focusing around cybersecurity or information security, which speaks a volume that, how much demand is there in the market. And they have felt the need that we need to introduce specific qualifications related to cybersecurity, which will help people give a head start when you pursue your career in this field. We go on to the next slide, James. Okay, so anybody would like, these are some of the examples of cyber risks, so basically how you relate a risk to a threat or vulnerability. So when a threat exploits a vulnerability, what is ultimately exposed or what remains is the risk, right? Because ultimately, there is certain level of exposure which happens, then there is a certain level of impact which would be there, and hence you're able to understand what is the risk to that asset. So you identify an asset, you identify what are the triads you want to protect for that asset, and then you understand what are the vulnerabilities in that asset, right, inherent or in and around the asset. You analyze what are the threat vectors which are available, which could exploit that vulnerability. And when we have this entire landscape set up, what comes as the cumulative thing or output from it is ultimately what is the cyber risk to that asset, right? Now, in what shape and form that risk could be there. The risk could be of identity theft, or the risk could be, it was genuine error, or it was a malicious act, in form of a malware or a worm or a malicious computer code or ransomware attacks. All of us would have heard about it, right? The ransomware attacks have like peaked up more than ever before, all-time high in last 4 months, especially during the COVID times, because phishing clubbed with ransomware attack or malicious code actually are at an all-time high, because you get people to fall prey using phishing emails, and then you're able to gain access to their data on assets, and then you ask them to pay money to release those codes or release that data, right? So it's a pick and combination of multiple vulnerabilities and threats, and which is then exploited and then results into huge risks. Let's go on, since we're talking about some of these, let's see some of the current events which have happened, recent times in cyber, and pretty unfortunate. events, but yes, and these were publicly available as well, and the stories were published quite in detail. So for a global hotel, this happened earlier this year when one of a couple of the attackers, they were able to get access to the credentials, the login credentials. Remember what John was talking about, your username and password? They were able to get access to the login credentials of an employee of the hotel, through which they were able to get into the inside network of the hotel. And through it, they were able to then access data of 5 million customers of that hotel. And imagine, when we do any booking for the hotel, whether online or physically, what kind of details we give out. We give out our name, our address, our date of birth, or some other important dates, our travel plans, in terms of check-in, check-out, and all of that. And all of that data actually got exposed, for 5 million plus customers. And then imagine, that clubbed with the kind of social media exposure we have, it becomes extremely easy then to track down a person and actually get the entire profile of a person out in a public or in social media, and then to possibly, exploit it either for monetary benefits or financial gains like ransomware attacks, or it could be just, just out of that evil pleasure to shut the business down or to trouble the person emotionally, right? I mean, what tangible gain do they get out of it? Probably nothing, but I think it's more of just the evil intentions which then play around. Similarly, for a major US bank, this was late last year when again millions of customers' data was leaked due to a small system breach. It was a small configuration in their firewall, which is the small network component, which was missed, and they did not patch it. When I say patch it, they did not upgrade it to the latest version. That small to get into the inside network of the bank and then exploit the system, which obviously led the bank to pay multi-million dollar financial penalty and a huge reputational loss, right? Which obviously results in a loss of business, and they're still recovering from that loss. It takes years to recover from such losses. Let's go on to the next. I think there are a few more examples which we have. So phishing, I think another common example of phishing was, and I don't know if you any of you would have seen, is hacking or doing the identity theft of Twitter accounts of celebrities, of well-known personalities, of former presidents of large countries like US. So people get hold of the Twitter account of these famous personalities and send obnoxious messages to all, right? Now they may not get any financial gains again out of it, right? So what's the motive? I think the motive mostly is just to impose as the celebrity and to give some kind of emotional and reputational trouble to these guys, right? You would have seen a lot of times, a couple of my friends' Facebook account got hacked, and we got all kinds of obscene mails and obscene messages being posted on his wall. And then ultimately he had to reach out to each of his friends personally and say, guys, my account has got hacked, and my identity has been stolen, and somebody's just using my account to post all kind of contradictory messages, all kind of obscene messages, which I'm kindly ignore. So it becomes quite a lot of trouble, honestly, to your social life, to your education, or even to your career. So for example, just linking it back to the point of cyberbullying, or to be cautious of what you post on social media. One thing which is important is that whatever gets posted on social media stays there forever. And there are a lot of companies, and at times when you apply to certain colleges or to certain organizations, they also, besides doing a reference check or a background check from your education institutes or from your colleges, from your peers, a lot of companies also do a background check on social media to see how your footprint has been on social media, because that also kinds of define your character and what kind of a person you are, right? It reveals a different side of you on whether it will be good for their organization to get associated with you, right? So what kind of goodwill do you have on social media, what kind of footprint you have on social media? That becomes a very, very important qualifying criteria at times when you're seeking admissions or when you're seeking job. So that's why also it becomes very important that you think twice before you post anything online. You would not want to be in a contradictory situation or in a situation where you have great qualifications, but because of some event which you did in college, purely for fun, but that reprimands, few years down the line or haunts you few years down the line. Nobody would want to be in that position. So similarly, the other couple of other events or incidents which are mentioned here is, like I said, in recent times, because of COVID-19, I think, again, playing on the emotional factor, like John said, you could be getting, and I do get hundreds of these emails every week saying that, okay, this is a mail from CDC or health department or WHO that, you have been tested positive and you need to do this. You need to click on this link to give your data immediately, or your report has come and the signs don't look good and you need to get admitted. This is all just grabbing attention and playing on your emotional factor so that you fall prey to it. You go and click, or you reveal some details, personal details, and then, you become a victim of any ransomware or any other phishing attacks. Sorry, if you can go to the next slide, James. Meanwhile, I'll just look at if there are any questions. Yeah, I think there's some interesting conversation going on. And I'm so glad to see that people are sharing some of the examples and stories which they have seen in their lives, which is great. I think all of this resonates, and glad to see that all of us are on the same page and you guys are quite updated, which is awesome. So, again, this is, again, a true story about a fake email link which threatens the entire company. So the one innocent employee clicked on an email thinking that it was sent to her account, and just clicking on it. So there are two things. One, you click and then you expose or you give away your personal details, right? Those kind of things typically have a more personal consequence to you, because you may your bank account details or your other financial details may get disclosed, right? And then they can be abused. The other thing is that you click on a link, and just by clicking on a link, a malicious code gets installed on your machine. And then, woo, because you're connected to the VPN or the company network, it gets spread in no time to the entire organization. And then either the company files are corrupted or they are encrypted, as it happened in this case. And then the attacker or the hacker then demanded a ransom, to give the decryption key. Otherwise, he said that the files will remain encrypted forever and they will get auto-deleted after a few hours. So obviously the company couldn't afford to lose that data. It was a very, very crucial and confidential data. So they had no choice but to pay and get the decryption key and revive the data. That's quite unfortunate, but these things keep happening day in, day out. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, just in the interest of time, I would like to spend some time on careers in cyber. Next slide, James. So I think, yeah, is cyber the hottest field in tech? Yeah, it's debatable, but I think we would still say that it is. It is definitely one of the hottest fields in tech. There has been tremendous growth over last 5-6 years. And I think in next 5 or 6 years also, it's expected to grow, multifold in double digits. And there are millions of unfilled jobs still in 2020 and 2021, as we talk about in this area. So obviously there is a lot of scope. At the same time, this field is very demanding. And I was talking to the group yesterday also, where I said that, this is one field which is so dynamic because things change every month. The threat vectors change every month. The technologies are always evolving and there is something new in the market all the time. So if you really want to be excelling in this field, you have to be on your toes. It's like you have to be continuously learning for your life, which is obviously exciting and challenging for us. But yes, it's not that okay, I got a degree and I got a job and I'm done. No more studying. They're just doing a 9-to-5 job and I'm great. I don't think, that kind of a thing typically works in cybersecurity, because the field is very dynamic and you have to continuously evolve yourself, innovate, and think creatively, to be able to think ahead of the hackers. If there are 100 ways to secure a particular thing, there are 101 ways to break it. So you actually have to be smarter than the people on the other side or than the hackers to be able to actually protect your assets from them. And that's what demands you to continuously learn as well in this field. Okay, if we go on to the next slide. So what kind of traits or what kind of attributes and qualifications are important, from education perspective, because a lot of it is related to, technology and engineering and information systems, or by, governance, or there are a lot of laws and regulations these days which govern and which demand organizations to comply with. And hence, any education qualification in any of these fields around computer science, around information systems, around information technology, or any regulations and laws or governance definitely gives you an edge, and gets you to a better understanding. You're not starting from a ground zero when you're starting your job. And in terms of the traits of softer aspects, what is required is, one, you need to have that knack for technology, like I said, because ultimately it's everything revolving around technology. And obviously, be able to do critical thinking and problem solving, excellent communication. You need to be creative and innovative, like I said, to be able to thinking ahead of the attackers and ahead of the problem makers, right? You have to solve those problems even before they occurred. That's the point, right? You need to be ready with the solution even before you encounter those problems. And that's why it demands you to be very high on critical thinking, problem solving, analytical skills. And obviously, a quest for continuous learning is really important. Next slide. And meanwhile, if there are any specific questions, please feel free to unmute and ask. But these are some of the sample, what you see here, I won't say this is all of it, or this is a very comprehensive list, or this is the exhaustive list. These are only some sample, I would say, job roles or designations, or, what you would possibly be doing, whether you are a security analyst or you are a security consultant, you could be an attorney, you could be an auditor, reviewing, for compliance, reviewing the controls which are implemented. You could be a developer, because there are all these apps, right? Like, for example, there is an antivirus app, or there is an anti-malware app, right? So who ultimately, some people develop it, right? So you could be a security app developer as well, or you could be a security engineer or a network engineer, so all the network equipments like firewall, router, your modem, your internet Wi-Fi connections and all that. Who's taking care of that? There are security engineers who design it, who develop it, and then they maintain it, they upgrade it, right? So that's a different pure technical field which comes in. And then there are a lot of process analysts, or there are a lot of forensic analysts, who do investigations. Once the attack has happened, they backtrack it on why did it happen, or what we could have done to avoid it, what you could do in future to avoid similar kind of incidences, right? Or helping once an incident happens. So for example, pandemic is a very huge incident, right? Which obviously has a lot of impacts on availability, because people were no more able to go to offices to work, right? So they had to respond to this incident. Are people enabled to be able to work from home? Do they have what they need in terms of resources to work from home, be it technology, be it internet connections, be it microphones, be it simple things like headphones and mic, or telephone lines at their home, right? Do they have continuous power connection or power backup so that they can remain online when they are needed to be? So all of this comes in incident response. And organizations obviously have learned, some have learned the hard way, some knew how to do it. So they were, so there are a lot of people who specialize in this particular field and help organize, organizations respond to such incidents. I'm just keen to see, sorry, James, I know we might be hitting the top of the hour in a few minutes, but at this point of time, if we would like to open up for any kind of, we can let this a day in the life of a security professional as the slide we stop on, but take a quick pause if there is anybody who has some question, or does this all, resonate to you? I'm keen to hear feedback. Do you find this interesting? Do you think you would want to consider this as a career option, or otherwise, do you find this topic interesting at all? Or how was today's session? Happy to receive some feedback.
Please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions or share feedback. Talk about somebody you know that works in cybersecurity.
So I see this is John Hodson. I see we're getting some good comments in, but one thing, Mittushi, that I think, could help amplify this is, while there's lots of great career paths, one thing that I want, everyone listening to understand is that there are wonderful opportunities to be innovative in this field. All the different career paths, all the different job roles, oftentimes, and Mittushi, you can sort of back me up on this, oftentimes work together to find new solutions, because every problem that clients come to us are not the same. So we often have to go and provide new and innovative ways. And oftentimes you have to work together to create brand new solutions, brand new innovative technologies, by combining different technologies that are coming out to the forefront each and every day. So, so creativity is also a big thing in here. So using the technical expertise to solve complex problems in an innovative way is something that I've learned from watching folks like Mittushi work each and every day with clients. So I don't know if you have any comments about that, Mittushi.
No, I completely agree and resonate, John, what you're saying. And that's why, that need and that quest for continuous learning, because there's so much scope. Honestly, it's very difficult to preempt what problem or what challenge will an organization face tomorrow. And every organization is so unique. So there is really a lot of room. So, we don't have anything called as play by the book or a rule book or a guidebook, that these are the only 15 things you need to do, right? Those 15 things change every single day, which is what I think has kept me excited for so long of, working in this field for 15 years, because I'm still learning new things every single day. There's a new challenge, there is a new threat, there is a new risk to encounter.
Would white hat hackers fit into the cybersecurity role? I think we've all heard of those good hackers. But it sounds like they're similar to kind of your role, right?
Yep. So they're called ethical hackers. that's the technical term. So I think, so yes. So for example, a part of our team also does ethical hacking, and it's just that we apply similar tools and technologies. It's just that our motive and our intention is different. We are not there to harm the system. We are there to identify on what ways a system could be harmed, right? Or identify the potential weaknesses in the system, which a non-ethical hacker would use and then exploit, and then get some gains and benefits out of it. So I think the motive and intent is different, but otherwise the skills and capabilities and the mediums used are pretty similar.
Yeah. And on the marketing side, we call that fighting cyber with cyber.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any other questions coming through, but I wanted to just take a moment for everybody to thank Mittushi and John for joining us today. Over the last 2 days in these competitions, I have learned a lot. I've actually gone through and changed some of my passwords to improve things. But just want to thank you for sharing your insights and your perspectives. And want to thank everybody on the line for joining us today from around the country, including Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. John, Mittushi, did you have any closing thoughts you wanted to share?
No, thank you so much. I think this has been a great opportunity, James, for me personally. It's always so exciting to interact with the young blood, and there's so many fresh ideas and fresh questions and fresh perspectives. So it's been great. Thank you so much. I think you guys were a lovely audience, and thank you so much for all the questions and feedback which you gave in the chat box. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. And if you have any questions that arise after this, please feel free to reach out to me at jcole@ naf.org. I'd be happy to connect with John and Mittushi for questions. So thanks again and have a wonderful day.
Take care, everybody.